Hi, I'm Rebecca. The sound of heavy boots echoing through the marble courthouse still gives me chills. One moment, my ex-husband Marcus was demanding custody of our daughter and half of everything I'd built, his lawyer smugly presenting document after document. And the next, federal agents in dark suits were storming through those mahogany doors, handcuffs glinting under the fluorescent lights. Marcus thought he could destroy me in that courtroom, take everything that mattered, and walk away clean. He had no idea that one encrypted file on my laptop would bring the full weight of the United States government crashing down on his perfectly orchestrated lies. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Marcus Blackwood had swept me off my feet during my graduate program at Georgetown. He was charming, ambitious, and working toward his MBA while already climbing the ranks at a prestigious consulting firm. When Emma was born, he seemed like the devoted father and husband I'd always hoped for. He attended every soccer game, helped with homework, and talked endlessly about the family business empire we'd build together. But success has a way of revealing people's true nature. As Marcus's consulting firm grew and started landing government contracts, something changed. He became secretive about his work, taking calls at odd hours and traveling frequently to meetings he couldn't discuss. When I'd ask questions, he'd dismiss my concerns with that practiced smile and remind me that his security clearance required discretion. I trusted him completely, even when late-night phone conversations in his office became the norm, even when business trips stretched longer and longer. Emma and I adapted. We created our own routines, our own traditions. Friday night movie marathons, weekend hiking trips in Shenandoah, summer evenings working in our garden while she told me about her dreams of studying environmental science. She was brilliant, ambitious, and had inherited my analytical mind along with her father's natural charisma. Teachers raved about her potential, and I couldn't have been prouder. I should have noticed the signs earlier, the way Marcus started questioning my work, suggesting that my government contracts might be limiting his business opportunities. How he began pushing for Emma to consider private schools where she could make better connections. The subtle criticisms about my appearance, my career focus, my obsession with digital security protocols. Looking back, he was systematically undermining my confidence, while positioning himself as the more successful, more stable parent. The divorce papers arrived on a Tuesday morning in March, delivered by a courier while I was reviewing threat assessments for a classified defense project. Emma had already left for school, her backpack heavy with textbooks, and her mind focused on an upcoming science fair, where she planned to present her research on cryptocurrency's environmental impact. Neither of us knew that our world was about to implode. Marcus wasn't just asking for a divorce. He was demanding full custody of Emma, claiming I was an unfit mother whose dangerous work in cybersecurity exposed our family to security risks. He wanted the house, half my retirement accounts, and spousal support despite earning significantly more than I did. The legal documents painted me as an obsessive workaholic who prioritized classified projects over family stability. That evening, I sat in our kitchen staring at the papers while Emma did homework at the counter, completely unaware that her father was trying to rip her away from everything she'd ever known. The first time I met Marcus's divorce attorney, Catherine Vance, I understood why he'd chosen her. She walked into the mediation conference room like she owned it, her Hermes briefcase clicking against Italian leather heels, silver hair pulled into a severe bun that made her look like she could dismember opposing counsel with a fountain pen. Catherine Vance didn't just practice family law, she weaponized it for clients wealthy enough to afford her scorched earth approach. "Mrs. Morrison," she said, deliberately using my maiden name though I hadn't legally changed it back yet, "my client has some very serious concerns about the environment you're providing for Emma." Marcus sat beside her, wearing the navy suit I'd bought him for our anniversary 2 years earlier. He wouldn't meet my eyes, instead focusing on Catherine's legal pad as she methodically laid out their strategy to paint me as an unfit mother. This was the same man who used to bring me coffee in bed every Sunday morning, who'd held my hand through Emma's difficult birth, who'd promised to love and protect our family forever. "Your work requires extensive travel to classified locations," Catherine continued, consulting her notes with theatrical precision. Emma is often left alone or with babysitters, while you're handling sensitive government contracts. My client believes a stable, consistent home environment would better serve her developmental needs. The irony was breathtaking. Marcus traveled twice as much as I did, often disappearing for weeks at a time on consulting projects he claimed were too sensitive to discuss. But somehow his version of absence was providing for the family, while mine was neglecting parental duties. Catherine's partner, David Chen, spoke up from across the table. He was younger, hungrier, with the kind of aggressive energy that suggested he saw our family's destruction as a career-building opportunity. We're also concerned about the security risks associated with Mrs. Morrison's clearance level. Emma could become a target for foreign intelligence services seeking leverage against defense contractors. It was a clever angle, I had to admit. They were twisting my expertise in cybersecurity into a liability, suggesting that my ability to protect national digital infrastructure somehow made me dangerous to my own daughter. The fact that Marcus's own government consulting work involved equally sensitive information was conveniently ignored. Furthermore, Catherine said, sliding a thick folder across the mahogany conference table, we have documentation showing a pattern of prioritizing work over family obligations. Missed school events, canceled family vacations, evening meetings that extended past Emma's bedtime. I opened the folder to find printed emails, calendar screenshots, and what appeared to be a detailed log of my work schedule going back 3 years. Someone had been systematically documenting every late night, every weekend project, every time my phone rang during dinner. The surveillance was so thorough, so invasive, that it could only have come from someone with intimate access to my daily life. Marcus had been building a case against me for years. My client is prepared to offer very generous visitation rights, Catherine continued smoothly. Alternating weekends and 1 evening per week, with holiday arrangements to be negotiated separately. Given Mrs. Morrison's demanding career requirements, this schedule would actually provide more quality time with Emma than the current arrangement. They were dismantling my motherhood with the efficiency of a hostile corporate takeover, reducing 15 years of bedtime stories, homework help, and soccer games to visitation rights. Marcus finally looked at me then, and I saw something in his eyes that chilled me more than Catherine's legal threats. He wasn't just trying to win custody, he was enjoying this. The custody evaluation was scheduled for a Thursday afternoon in May, and I could feel Marcus orchestrating every detail like a military campaign. Dr. Sarah Winters, the court-appointed psychologist, arrived at our McLean house precisely on time, carrying a clipboard and wearing the kind of neutral expression that suggested she'd seen every variety of family dysfunction imaginable. I'll be observing normal family interactions, Dr. Winters explained as Emma bounded down the stairs, still in her soccer uniform from after-school practice. Just go about your regular routine while I take some notes. What Dr. Winters couldn't see was how Marcus had spent the previous week coaching Emma on what to say, subtly planting doubts about my availability and dedication. I'd overheard fragments of their conversations through the thin walls of our house. Remember how many times Mom had to work late during your championship games? And it's okay to tell the truth about feeling lonely when she travels. Marcus moved through our family home like he still lived there, pointing out photos and achievements to Dr. Winters with proprietorial pride. Emma's science fair trophy, he said, touching the golden microscope figurine on the mantelpiece. I was so proud when she won first place. Rebecca had to join the ceremony by video call because of a work emergency. The fact that my work emergency had been preventing a cyber attack on a military satellite system was something I couldn't explain without violating security protocols. So I stood silent while Marcus painted my dedication to national security as neglect of my daughter. Tell Dr. Winters about your environmental science project, Marcus encouraged Emma, his voice warm with paternal interest. The one about cryptocurrency mining's carbon footprint. Emma lit up, launching into an explanation of blockchain technology and energy consumption that would have impressed graduate students. She was brilliant, articulate, and completely unaware that her father was using her intelligence as ammunition against me. Mom helped me understand the technical aspects, Emma said, looking at me with genuine affection, She knows all about digital systems and security protocols. Sometimes she explains her work to me, and it's fascinating. I saw Dr. Winters make a note, but Marcus quickly redirected the conversation. Of course, we have to be careful about discussing classified information at home. Security protocols exist for good reasons. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The implication hung in the air like smoke. I was careless with sensitive information, potentially exposing our daughter to dangerous knowledge. Marcus had learned to weaponize everything, even Emma's natural curiosity about my career. Mrs. Morrison, Dr. Winters asked, how do you balance your security clearance requirements with family transparency? It was a loaded question with no good answer. Too much honesty about my work would suggest security violations. Too little would support Marcus's narrative about secretiveness and unavailability. I share what I can within legal boundaries, I said carefully. Emma knows I work to protect computer systems for the government. The specifics need to remain confidential for national security reasons. Marcus jumped in smoothly. It can be challenging for a teenager to understand why her mother can't discuss her work. Emma sometimes feels shut out of that part of Rebecca's life. Emma looked confused, glancing between us with the expression of someone realizing they'd been caught in the middle of something larger than they understood. I don't feel shut out, Dad. Mom explains things really well. But the damage was done. Dr. Winters had recorded Marcus's version, his careful framing of my professional obligations as family dysfunction. Every answer I gave seemed to confirm his narrative, the secretive mother whose important work created distance from her own daughter. The emergency custody hearing was called for a Friday morning in June, just 3 days before Emma's 15th birthday. I sat in the courthouse waiting area, reviewing my notes one final time, when my phone buzzed with a text from Emma. Mom, where are all my things? Dad says we're moving today. My blood turned to ice. I called Emma immediately, but the phone went straight to voicemail. I tried the house landline, then Marcus's cell. Nothing. In the span of minutes, my world shifted from custody battle to something that felt dangerously close to kidnapping. Catherine Vance appeared at my shoulder like a predator smelling blood. Mrs. Morrison, I need to inform you of some developments. My client has discovered evidence of security breaches in your home computer system. She handed me a manila envelope thick with documents. Inside were screenshots of my personal laptop, showing files that should never have been accessible to anyone without top-secret clearance. The images showed classified project names, budget figures, and contractor information that Marcus should never have seen. These screenshots were taken 3 days ago, Catherine continued with practiced sympathy. Mr. Blackwood was using the family computer to help Emma with homework when he accidentally accessed your work files. As a concerned citizen with his own security clearance, he felt obligated to report the potential violation. The setup was masterful in its simplicity. Marcus had somehow gained access to my encrypted work files, documented the breach, and was now using national security protocols to paint me as careless with classified information. The very expertise that made me valuable to my employer was being twisted into evidence of unfitness as a mother. Judge Patricia Hawkins entered the courtroom with the bearing of someone who'd heard every possible variation of family dysfunction. But when Catherine began presenting the security breach evidence, something changed in her expression. This wasn't just another custody dispute. This was potentially a federal crime. Your Honor, Catherine said, her voice carrying new gravity, we're requesting emergency temporary custody based on these security violations. Mrs. Morrison's clearance status is under review, which could result in criminal charges. Emma shouldn't be in a home where classified information has been improperly stored and accessed. Marcus sat at the plaintiff's table looking like the concerned father he'd always pretended to be. When he took the witness stand, his testimony was devastating in its apparent sincerity. I love Rebecca, he said, his voice breaking slightly. But when I saw those files on her laptop, files about defense contracts and military projects, I realized Emma was living in an environment that could make her a target for foreign agents. As a father, I couldn't ignore that risk. He described finding the files while helping Emma research her science project, accidentally clicking through folders that revealed classified information. His security training, he explained, required him to report the potential breach to protect national security. Everything he'd done was motivated by love for his daughter and duty to his country. The performance was flawless. Even I almost believed him. Furthermore, Your Honor, Catherine added, Mr. Blackwood has accepted a position with a consulting firm in California, offering Emma a fresh start away from these security concerns. He's prepared to relocate immediately to ensure her safety. The gavel came down like thunder. Temporary custody to Marcus pending security clearance review. I could see Emma in 2 weeks for supervised visitation. My daughter, my home, my career. Everything that mattered was being systematically stripped away by a man who claimed to love us both. The call from my security officer came at 6:47 a.m. on Monday morning, 3 days after Marcus had driven away with Emma and half our belongings loaded into a U-Haul truck. Agent Jennifer Walsh's voice was crisp, professional, and carried the kind of authority that made my stomach drop before she'd even finished speaking. Mrs. Morrison, your security clearance has been suspended pending a full investigation. Please report to Building 7 at 0900 for debriefing. Bring your badge, access cards, and any government-issued devices. I sat in my empty kitchen, surrounded by the echoes of a family life that had been systematically dismantled, and realized the true scope of Marcus's strategy. This wasn't just about custody or money. He was destroying my entire professional identity. The career I'd spent 15 years building from entry-level analyst to senior cybersecurity specialist. The debriefing room at the defense contractor's facility felt like an interrogation chamber. Agent Walsh sat across from me with a thick file and the expression of someone who'd already reached conclusions about my guilt or innocence. Behind her stood Agent Robert Chen from the Department of Defense Inspector General's office, taking notes on everything I said. Let's start with your home computer security protocols, Agent Walsh said, opening the file to reveal the same screenshots Marcus had provided to Catherine Vance. These images show classified project files stored on an unsecured personal laptop. Can you explain how that occurred? I stared at the screenshots, my analytical mind immediately recognizing something that made my blood run cold. The file structure was wrong. The encryption signatures didn't match my security protocols. Someone had deliberately moved classified files from my secure work partition to the unsecured personal side of my laptop. These files were planted, I said quietly. Someone with administrative access moved them from my encrypted work drive to create the appearance of a security violation. Agent Chen looked up from his notepad. That's a serious accusation, Mrs. Morrison. Who would have had that level of access to your personal computer? The answer was obvious, but saying it aloud felt like admitting I'd been living with a stranger for 15 years. My husband had the administrative password. He set up our home network security when we bought the house. Agent Walsh made a note. Mr. Blackwood reported discovering these files accidentally while helping your daughter with homework. Are you suggesting he deliberately planted them? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Mom, Dad says we're staying in California permanently. He enrolled me in school here. I don't understand what's happening. Please call me. Emma. My heart shattered as I realized Marcus wasn't just taking her across the country. He was erasing me from her life entirely. The supervised visitation, the temporary custody order. It was all a smokescreen while he established residency in California and filed for permanent custody modification. Agent Walsh, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I need to show you something that might change your investigation's focus. I opened my laptop and navigated to a hidden partition I'd created months earlier, when Marcus's behavior first started seeming suspicious. Inside was a folder labeled Network Activity Logs, automated recordings of every device that accessed our home system, every file transfer, every login attempt. The logs told a different story than Marcus's testimony. They showed systematic access to my work files over the past 6 months, always during times when I was traveling for projects. Someone had been methodically copying classified information, documenting security protocols, and building what looked like a comprehensive intelligence package. Agent Chen leaned forward, studying the screen. Mrs. Morrison, these logs suggest ongoing surveillance of your work activities. Why didn't you report this earlier? Because I'd trusted my husband. Because I'd believed his explanations about needing network access for his own consulting work. Because I'd never imagined that the man who'd promised to love and protect our family was actually building a case to destroy me. The call from Catherine Vance came while I was sitting in a parking garage. waiting for Agent Walsh to finish reviewing my network logs. Catherine's voice carried the satisfied tone of someone delivering a checkmate move. "Rebecca, darling, we need to discuss your current situation. My client is prepared to be generous, but you need to understand the reality you're facing." I gripped the phone tighter, watching federal agents through my windshield as they carried boxes of evidence from my house. "What do you want, Catherine?" "First, drop any accusations about planted files or surveillance. My client was doing his patriotic duty by reporting security violations. Second, sign the custody modification allowing permanent relocation to California. Emma is already enrolled in an excellent private school there." The casual mention of Emma's enrollment hit like a physical blow. Marcus was systematically erasing our life in Virginia, making it impossible for me to maintain any meaningful relationship with my daughter. "And if I refuse?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. Catherine's laugh was sharp as broken glass. "Then the security investigation continues. Your clearance remains suspended indefinitely, and you face potential federal charges for mishandling classified information. Meanwhile, Emma remains in California under temporary custody that becomes permanent by default." She paused, letting the implications sink in. "Of course, there's also the matter of your mortgage payments. Without your defense contractor salary, how long can you afford the house? 3 months? 6 at most?" The financial calculation was brutally simple. My security clearance was my entire career. Without it, I couldn't work in cybersecurity, couldn't access the specialized job market I'd spent years building expertise in. Catherine was betting that financial desperation would force me to surrender everything. "There's one more thing," Catherine continued, her voice taking on a theatrical sympathy. "Some concerning allegations have come to light about your mental state during the custody proceedings. Paranoid delusions about surveillance. Conspiracy theories about planted evidence. Dr. Winters has concerns about your fitness for unsupervised visitation." The psychological warfare was expertly crafted. They were painting my legitimate discovery of Marcus's surveillance as mental instability, using my own evidence against me. Every move I made to defend myself was being twisted into proof of unfitness as a mother. My phone buzzed with another text from Emma. "Mom, Dad says you're having problems at work and might not be able to visit. He says it's better if I focus on adjusting to California. I miss you." Marcus was poisoning my daughter against me while maintaining plausible deniability. In Emma's eyes, he was the protective father helping her adjust to necessary changes, while I was the absent mother too, wrapped up in work problems to prioritize family. "Catherine," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady, "what exactly is Marcus offering?" "Visitation rights. 1 week during summer vacation, alternating Christmas holidays. Emma maintains her California residency and education. You get to remain in her life without disrupting her stability." It was a devil's bargain wrapped in maternal concern. Accept the destruction of our mother-daughter relationship in exchange for avoiding prison and financial ruin. Let Marcus win completely while pretending it was about Emma's best interests. "I need time to consider." "Time is a luxury you don't have," Catherine interrupted. "The federal investigation is expanding." Agent Walsh asked some very interesting questions about Marcus's consulting work yesterday. Things could get much worse for everyone if this situation isn't resolved quickly. The threat was clear: back down or watch everything burn, including any chance of seeing Emma again. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Lisa Martinez, Emma's AP Environmental Science teacher, called me on a Thursday evening while I was sitting in my empty house, staring at Catherine Vance's ultimatum documents. "Mrs. Morrison, I hope I'm not overstepping, but Emma submitted a research project before she left for California that I think you should see. She was investigating cryptocurrency transactions for her carbon footprint analysis, and she found some unusual patterns." My analytical mind immediately sparked with interest. "What kind of patterns?" She traced Bitcoin mining operations that appeared to be shell companies, but the real interesting part was the transaction flows. Emma identified what looked like money laundering through environmental consulting contracts. She was so excited about the forensic accounting aspects that she asked if she could expand it into a summer research project. I sat up straighter. Emma had inherited my love for digital forensics, and her environmental science focus had led her into financial analysis that might have uncovered something significant. Dr. Martinez, can you send me Emma's research files? Already done. Check your email. Mrs. Morrison, Emma is worried about you. She doesn't understand why her father suddenly moved them to California, and she keeps asking when she can come home. 20 minutes later, I was staring at my daughter's work with a mixture of pride and growing excitement. Emma had unknowingly documented a sophisticated money laundering operation using cryptocurrency transactions tied to environmental consulting firms. The financial flows she'd traced led to shell companies that, according to her research notes, had connections to Marcus's consulting business. I called Agent Walsh immediately. Agent Walsh, this is Rebecca Morrison. I need to meet with you tonight. I have evidence that the security breach investigation might be connected to something much larger. Agent Walsh arrived at my house 2 hours later, accompanied by Agent Chen and a woman I didn't recognize who carried herself with the quiet authority of senior federal law enforcement. This is Agent Sarah Parker from the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, Agent Walsh said. She's been investigating cryptocurrency money laundering operations tied to defense contractors. I showed them Emma's research, explaining how her environmental project had led her to identify suspicious financial patterns. Agent Parker studied the data with the focus of someone who understood exactly what they were looking at. Your daughter has excellent analytical instincts, Agent Parker said finally. She's identified transactions that we've been tracking for 8 months as part of a broader investigation into defense contractor fraud. Agent Chen looked up from his notes. Mrs. Morrison, what did your husband know about Emma's research project? The question hit me like lightning. Marcus had helped Emma with her homework, had access to her computer files, had seen her analysis of cryptocurrency transactions. If he was involved in the money laundering operation Emma had uncovered, her research represented a direct threat to his criminal activities. He moved her to California 3 days after she submitted this project, I said quietly. Agent Walsh and Agent Parker exchanged glances that suggested they'd reached the same conclusion. Mrs. Morrison, Agent Parker said, we'd like to offer you a deal. Your security clearance gets reinstated immediately, and we provide federal protection for you and Emma in exchange for your cooperation in a broader investigation into defense contractor fraud. For the first time in weeks, I felt something that might have been hope. Marcus thought he'd destroyed me, but Emma's brilliance had just handed me the key to bringing him down. The federal custody hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in August, and I walked into the Arlington courthouse wearing a wire. Agent Parker had insisted on recording everything, explaining that Marcus's defense would likely involve more lies that needed to be documented in real time. Marcus sat at the defendant's table, looking every inch the successful consultant he'd always pretended to be. His California lawyer, a sharp-featured woman named Jennifer Cross, had flown in specifically for this hearing. Neither of them knew that 3 months of federal investigation had unraveled Marcus's entire criminal enterprise. Catherine Vance looked less confident than usual, shuffling through papers with the distracted air of someone who sensed the ground shifting beneath her feet. The security breach allegations that had been the foundation of their custody case were crumbling as federal agents traced the real source of the planted files. Judge Hawkins entered with an expression that suggested she'd been briefed on developments that went far beyond family law. Before we proceed with custody matters, I understand there are federal charges pending that may impact these proceedings. Agent Parker stood from the gallery. Your Honor, the United States Attorney's Office has filed federal charges against Marcus Blackwood for money laundering, defense contractor fraud, and conspiracy to commit espionage. The words hit the courtroom like thunder. Jennifer Cross immediately objected, claiming the federal charges were unrelated to custody issues, but Judge Hawkins cut her off with a gesture. Mr. Blackwood, the judge said, you're accused of using classified information obtained from your wife's security clearance to facilitate criminal activities. How do those accusations affect your fitness as a parent? Marcus finally looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes that confirmed everything the federal investigation had revealed. Not surprise or confusion, but cold calculation, as he tried to determine how much evidence they had against him. "Your Honor," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the circumstances, "these allegations are part of a vindictive campaign by my ex-wife to undermine our custody agreement. She's used her security clearance connections to fabricate evidence against me." It was a desperate move, but predictable. Marcus was trying to flip the script one final time, painting himself as the victim of federal overreach orchestrated by a bitter ex-wife. Agent Parker approached the bench with a manila folder thick with evidence. "Your Honor, we have cryptocurrency transaction records, surveillance footage, and recorded conversations documenting Mr. Blackwood's criminal activities. We also have testimony from Emma Blackwood regarding her father's attempts to access her research into financial crimes." Emma. The mention of my daughter's name made my heart race. Agent Parker had interviewed her by video call the previous week, with her California social worker present, documenting how Marcus had pressured her to delete her environmental science research after moving to California. Catherine Vance made one last attempt to salvage the situation. "Your Honor, even if these federal allegations prove true, they don't necessarily impact Mr. Blackwood's parenting abilities. Emma is thriving in California, and stability should be the primary consideration." Judge Hawkins consulted the federal briefing documents that Agent Parker had submitted. "Ms. Vance, your client is accused of using his daughter's academic research to identify vulnerabilities in his own money laundering operation. That suggests he was willing to exploit his child's intellectual abilities for criminal purposes." The courtroom fell silent as the implications sank in. Marcus hadn't just stolen classified information from me. He'd manipulated Emma's schoolwork to protect his criminal enterprise, then fled to California when her research threatened to expose him. "Furthermore," Judge Hawkins continued, "the evidence suggests Mr. Blackwood systematically planted classified files on his wife's computer to discredit her in custody proceedings. This represents a calculated attempt to separate a child from her mother through fraudulent means." The moment I had been dreading and anticipating for months finally arrived when Emma walked into the Arlington courthouse on a September morning, flanked by federal marshals and a victim advocate. She looked older than her 15 years, her face carrying the weight of revelations that had shattered her understanding of her father and forced her to grow up faster than any teenager should. Marcus's arrest in California had been swift and decisive. Agent Parker later told me that he'd tried to flee to Mexico with nearly $2 million in cryptocurrency, but Emma had provided the transaction codes that allowed federal agents to freeze his accounts. My brilliant daughter had unknowingly become the key witness in bringing down her own father's criminal empire. "Emma," Judge Hawkins said gently, "I understand this is difficult, but I need to ask you some questions about your research project and your father's behavior after you moved to California." Emma nodded, settling into the witness chair with the same focused composure she'd always shown when tackling complex problems. "I understand, Your Honor. I want to tell the truth about what happened." Jennifer Cross, Marcus's attorney, made one final attempt to protect her client. "Objection, Your Honor. This minor has been subjected to intensive federal questioning without adequate parental representation. Her testimony may be compromised by coaching from law enforcement." Judge Hawkins fixed Jennifer with a stare that could have frozen lava. "Ms. Cross, your client is accused of exploiting his daughter's academic work for criminal purposes. The court will hear her testimony." Emma's voice was steady as she described her environmental science project, explaining how she'd traced cryptocurrency transactions that appeared to be disguised as consulting payments. "I thought I was just documenting energy consumption patterns, but when I showed Dad my research, he became really upset and told me to delete everything." "What reason did he give for wanting you to delete your work?" Judge Hawkins asked. "He said it might be dangerous to investigate financial companies, that they could sue us or cause problems for our family. But I'd already submitted the project to my teacher, so deleting my files seemed pointless." Agent Parker had briefed me on this testimony during our preparation sessions. Emma's academic curiosity had led her to document the exact cryptocurrency flows that federal investigators had been tracking for months. Marcus's panicked reaction to her research had been the beginning of his downfall. "Emma," I said from the witness stand when my turn came, "did your father ask you any questions about my work computer or security protocols?" My daughter looked directly at me for the first time since entering the courtroom, and I saw years of confusion finally clicking into understanding. He asked me to help him access your laptop sometimes when you were traveling. He said he needed to check our family calendar or find important documents. Catherine Vance objected weakly, but the damage was done. Emma had unknowingly provided Marcus with access to my encrypted work files, giving him the opportunity to plant classified information and create the security breach that had nearly destroyed my career. "Your Honor," Agent Parker interjected, rising from her seat with a thick folder of evidence. "We have additional testimony from Emma regarding her father's behavior after relocating to California." Emma's composure wavered slightly as she described how Marcus had isolated her from friends, monitored her phone calls, and pressured her to say negative things about me during welfare check calls from Virginia's social services. "He told me that Mom was having mental health problems because of work stress, and that it would be better for everyone if I focused on making new friends in California instead of worrying about her," Emma said, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. The manipulation was breathtaking in its cruelty. Marcus had weaponized Emma's love for both her parents, convincing her that protecting him meant helping me by staying away. He'd turned my daughter into an unwilling accomplice in her own kidnapping. Furthermore, Agent Parker continued, Mr. Blackwood attempted to use Emma's research skills to identify potential weaknesses in federal cryptocurrency tracking systems. He presented it as a father-daughter bonding activity, asking her to analyze transaction patterns that we now know were part of his money laundering network. Judge Hawkins turned to Marcus, who had remained silent throughout Emma's testimony. "Mr. Blackwood, you systematically exploited your daughter's intellectual abilities and emotional attachment to facilitate criminal activities. You manipulated her research, isolated her from her mother, and attempted to use her as a shield against federal prosecution." Marcus finally spoke, his voice carrying none of its former confidence. "Your Honor, everything I did was to protect my family from Rebecca's reckless behavior with classified information. I was trying to provide Emma with stability and security. By stealing classified information, laundering money through defense contracts, and fleeing across state lines with your daughter." Judge Hawkins's voice carried the weight of absolute judgment. "Mr. Blackwood, you'll face federal sentencing for your crimes. But first, this court needs to address the custody situation you've created through fraud and manipulation." The gavel came down with the finality of thunder, and Judge Hawkins's words echoed through the marble courthouse like a declaration of justice finally served. "Custody is hereby restored to Rebecca Morrison. Mr. Blackwood's parental rights are suspended pending resolution of federal criminal charges." Emma ran to me across the courtroom, her 15-year-old composure finally cracking as she buried her face against my shoulder and sobbed with the relief of someone who'd been carrying impossible burdens for months. I held her tight, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo and feeling the solid reality of my daughter back in my arms where she belonged. Marcus was led away in handcuffs, his expensive suit wrinkled and his carefully constructed facade finally stripped away to reveal the manipulative criminal he'd always been beneath the surface. Catherine Vance and Jennifer Cross packed their briefcases with the efficiency of lawyers who knew they'd lost completely, their clients' federal charges making any appeal pointless. Agent Parker approached us with a smile that transformed her typically serious expression. "Mrs. Morrison, the Justice Department wants to offer you a consulting position with our cybercrime division. Your expertise in tracking financial fraud through digital systems would be invaluable for ongoing investigations." The irony wasn't lost on me. Marcus's attempt to destroy my security clearance and career had instead connected me with federal law enforcement opportunities that exceeded anything I'd imagined possible. His criminal activities had opened doors that might have remained closed for years under normal circumstances. 6 months later, I stood in the kitchen of our McLean house, watching Emma work on a new research project that had attracted attention from the FBI's Financial Crimes Task Force. She'd been invited to present her cryptocurrency analysis methodology at a federal law enforcement conference, the youngest presenter in the event's history. "Mom," Emma said, looking up from her laptop where columns of financial data scrolled across multiple screens, "Agent Parker wants to know if I'd be interested in a summer internship with FinCEN next year. She says my pattern recognition skills could help identify new money laundering techniques." My brilliant daughter had turned her traumatic experience into expertise that could help law enforcement protect other families from financial crimes. The research project that Marcus had tried to suppress had become the foundation for Emma's future career in forensic accounting and cybercrime investigation. "What do you think?" I asked, settling beside her at the kitchen counter where we'd shared homework sessions and late-night conversations for years. "I want to do it," Emma said firmly. "What Dad did to us, what he did to other families through his consulting fraud, it can't happen again. If I can help catch people like him, then maybe something good comes from all the horrible stuff we went through." The transformation in Emma was remarkable. The confused, manipulated teenager who'd been used as a pawn in Marcus's criminal enterprise had evolved into a confident young woman with clear moral purpose and exceptional analytical abilities. She'd discovered that her intellectual gifts could serve justice rather than being exploited by those who claimed to love her. Our relationship had deepened through the crisis in ways I never expected. The artificial distance that Marcus had created between us, through his manipulation and control, had been replaced by genuine communication and mutual respect. Emma understood now why my work mattered, why security protocols existed, and how her own abilities could contribute to protecting national interests. "There's something else," Emma said, minimizing her research screens to reveal an email from Stanford University. The admissions office contacted me about early application to their computer science program. Apparently, my federal testimony and research work have made me what they call, quote, a candidate of exceptional interest. I stared at the email, pride and amazement warring in my chest. Emma was 15 years old and already being recruited by one of the world's most prestigious universities based on work that had grown from her father's criminal activities. "Emma, that's incredible, but you have 3 years to decide about college. You don't need to rush into anything because universities are interested," she smiled, the expression carrying wisdom that seemed far beyond her years. "I know, Mom, but I also know what I want to study and why it matters. Dad tried to use my research to protect his crimes, but now I understand how the same skills can be used to stop people like him." The doorbell rang, interrupting our conversation. Through the window, I saw Agent Parker's government sedan in our driveway, along with a black SUV that suggested official business. Agent Parker entered with 2 men in dark suits who carried themselves with the quiet authority of senior federal officials. "Mrs. Morrison, Emma, I'd like you to meet Deputy Director James Mitchell from the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network and Assistant Director Sarah Chen from the FBI's Cyber Division." Deputy Director Mitchell shook hands with both of us, his expression serious but respectful. "Mrs. Morrison, your work helping us trace Marcus Blackwood's money laundering network has been exceptional. The cryptocurrency tracking methodologies you developed have become standard protocols for financial crime investigations." Assistant Director Chen turned to Emma with genuine admiration. "Emma, your research identified financial patterns that our best analysts had missed. You have a gift for seeing connections that aren't obvious to others." "We have a proposition," Deputy Director Mitchell continued. "The federal government is establishing a new task force focused on cryptocurrency crimes and defense contractor fraud. Mrs. Morrison, we'd like you to lead the cybersecurity division. Emma, we'd like to offer you a special research internship that would allow you to work with federal analysts while completing your high school education." The offer was everything I'd dreamed of professionally, but I looked at Emma before responding. This decision had to be hers as much as mine. "What would the internship involve?" Emma asked with the practical focus that had always characterized her approach to new opportunities. "Working with our analysts to identify emerging financial crime patterns, developing new tracking methodologies, and potentially testifying in federal cases where your research contributed to prosecutions," Assistant Director Chen explained. Emma's eyes lit up with the same excitement I'd seen when she discovered challenging problems in her environmental science classes. "Would I be helping catch people who commit financial crimes against families?" "Exactly," Deputy Director Mitchell said. "Your work could help us protect thousands of families from the kind of manipulation and fraud your father perpetrated." Emma looked at me, then back at the federal officials who were offering us the chance to transform our trauma into meaningful service. "Mom, I think we should do it. We can help make sure what happened to us doesn't happen to other people." I reached across the table and took my daughter's hand, feeling the strength and determination that had carried her through the darkest months of our lives. Marcus had tried to destroy us, to steal Emma's future and my career, to reduce us to broken victims of his manipulative control. Instead, his criminal activities had revealed our strength, connected us with opportunities beyond anything we'd imagined, and given us purpose that extended far beyond our own healing. We had not just survived his betrayal, we had transformed it into power that could protect others and serve justice. Yes, I said, squeezing Emma's hand and looking directly at the federal officials who represented our new future. We'll do it. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.